shot I really had was the legs. If you can, they need their legs to fly. Yeah. So they have a huge drumstick, and it comes up in, comes up into their midsection there, into the lower gut cavity. But that one we just, I ended up shooting it, and it broke both legs. So that's another good shot, right? The back legs. You can get them that way. But my favorite again is if they're facing white. If they're strutting at full strut, and their fans facing you, right where all the tail feathers come together. Again, because that body's horizontal, you can drive it right in where those tail feathers come together, and it'll go the whole length of their body.
So your preference is to put them at a broadside?
I like them quartered at me a little bit, so the birds are facing a little bit, so you can shoot. I too like up higher, or if you can break them down the legs. It doesn't kill them as quick, but they don't get away. I've had probably 15 birds that we have found that may have flew 300 yards after we hit them, and when we find them, they're dead. But they will take off.
They're tough.
My son shot one on a TV show with his bow. Yeah. It took off, broke the arrow in half, and I'm like, luckily we had the camera, we could rewind it and pause it, and I'm like, man, that is a good shot. And I bet it was 500 yards when we found that bird. And that happens very often. That's why the drumstick thing's nice, because they don't go anywhere. I've had them fall over and don't even, just dead. It's kind of touchy. It's different than a shotgun. And if you do shoot the ones, the big razor blades like guillotines or guillotines, practice them before you bring them out in the field. I know they're expensive and nobody wants to shoot them, but I've had probably 10 people try to hit one of those, and they haven't even got close enough to scare the bird with them. All they do is cut a bunch of holes in your blind when they're waving them around. That razor blade hits the side, I tell you, it'll cut it right now. So yeah, you have to practice with those. And expandables are legal for turkeys. And a lot of people don't know that. Do not buy any old expandable. I've had a client shoot one, and the arrow bounced off at like 35 yards. I was sitting, I said, is your bow at like 20 pounds? He said, no, it's 56. And this guy's he killed a polar bear with his bow. I mean, an accomplished hunter. But the kind of expandables he had, I don't know. I've seen Scott kill numerous birds with expandables, and they work well, because you have a large, once they open up, you have a lot of damage. And they fly good. They fly just like a target tip. So do your homework, and rangefinders now, there's so many of them out there, so many good ones. And don't wait till the birds come in to range everything. Range, I mean, you can find stuff out there to range before you set up. So know some distances beforehand, and with the bow. A blind is very helpful with the bow too. You can get them without a blind, but it's easier. And like Scott mentioned, the tree stand, we thought it'd be kind of neat, but it didn't pan out all that well.
Yeah, that was hard. It can be done. And again, don't be afraid to set the decoys close. A buddy of mine, Tim Carroll, he came out. I posted TV shows with him. Turkeys are his favorite thing. He hunts them all over the country. It's almost sad how addicted he is to turkey hunting. He's from the south. But he puts his decoys, he'll put them 4 to 5 yards from his blind. So and that's every time. That's what he does. He does it for TV, and he does it, on personal hunts, 4 to 5 yards. So you can get those birds coming in close, and just make sure that everything in the back of the blind is shut, so you're not backlit. And it's phenomenal. My boy took him to Texas on his first turkey hunt. He killed a turkey when he was 6. And that with his bow. And that bird came in, I mean, it wasn't 2 feet from our blind. Came right by us and went right up to the decoys, and we shot at 11 yards. So don't be apprehensive about a blind. They won't, as long as there's no movement, the birds will come right into a blind like that.
One word of caution on blinds is there's a lot of them out there, and some of them are really well priced, really affordable. The one thing I have had in past that spooks them with the blind is that the fabric on the side is not tight and the wind will shake it. That'll spook them. I couldn't figure out what it was, and I cut a stick and tried to stick in there, and it didn't work. I used the double bowls just because that's what Scott got me started on. I've had incredible luck with them. They're fairly fast to set up unless you get stuck inside of them, which I do 2 or 3 times a year. But other than that, they go up pretty darn good. They work well, but just keep everything behind you and don't open any more windows than you have to. Keep it as dark as you can in there, and you don't have to wear camouflage. In fact, I think black clothing is probably harder to see in a blind than the camouflage is.
Jody, can we go back and cover those calls that you started with?
Okay. I'm a little different with the calling. The more I hunt, like Scott said before, he's in a hurry more because he's time-wise, and he calls a lot more than I do. I don't call any if the turkey's just kind of duck hunting, if I make a yelp, say, I mean just a plain old, the tom gobbles, I can see him strutting, and if he is advancing toward me, I won't call again. If he's still coming, if he'll stop and just stay there for a while and then keep coming, I don't call anymore. One reason is, like I said earlier, the toms, they will gobble and attract the hens to them. So I don't know, it's just like if you guys archery hunt for elk, or if you call it elk here, a lot of times you'll hear a bull bugle and bugle and bugle, and it's neat. You don't really want that with a turkey. A turkey will be up on a ridge and full strut and gobble, gobble, gobble. Every time you call, he may answer and you think, oh, this is cool. What he's doing is he's gobbling and gobbling and gobbling, and he's going to call a hen to him. And as soon as that hen goes to him, they're going to blast out of there, and there's no way you're going to call a tom away from a live, warm-blooded hen. I don't care how big you are. So the more he gobbles like that, if he's hung up there and you're still calling and calling and calling, and he's not advancing, a lot of times it's best either to try to move and get somewhere else. Usually it's hard to get them in. If they hang up and start gobbling and just strutting back and forth and back and forth, one thing you can do is change calls. Sometimes that'll get them in. But for the calls that I like to use, this is an all-weather wooden box call. There's a ton of box calls out there that are all-weather. Most of them are made out of plastic, or they have some kind of asphalt-looking surface here on the paddle and the striker end of the box call. This one's made by Jones Calls, and I use this probably 90% of the time. It's easy. It sounds incredible. It doesn't matter if you get it in a bucket of water or a downpour or anything. It's very easy to use. You don't need to, like Scott said about the competition callers, you don't need to be able to make 70 sounds. If you can give a good yelp, that'll kill you 90% of the birds. It's very easy to do. A lot of people hold their calls like this and just, it doesn't matter. I personally got where I started holding them like this. It's just a matter of preference. For a yelp,
It looks cool too.
it looks cool? Yeah, I feel better doing it this way. So with a yelp on a box call like this, unlike a slate, which we'll go over in a little while, you don't continue to touch the surface of the call on your backstroke. It's lift it up. And I've got, trust me, I've got boxes of calls, and for some reason, turkeys like this call. It might not sound better to me than the other ones, but I'm telling you, I do this for a living, and if it didn't sound good, I throw it out the window. I have to have it work, and this call works very well. And just one thing to pay attention to when you are calling is try to match the cadence of the birds that you're calling to. I mean, they're not going. So even though that yelp may sound right, that's not in the same cadence that the birds are. So sometimes they'll go up to seven yelp. Sometimes it might just be. So just try to match what the birds are doing. If you can see them, that's what's nice. If you can watch the tom and see how he's reacting, you can tell. That's just a basic yelp. For a cut, it's just a sharp. Sometimes a lot of times when they come into the decoys, they're still in full strut. That's a tough shot for a shotgun. It's a pretty good shot for a bow, but for a shotgun, their neck and their head's all sucked down. And if you did want to mount the bird, a lot of times it seems like you have a pretty large area with a lot of loose feathers laying around if you shoot them at that time. So you can give a little, when they get in close, and a lot of times they'll stick their head straight up and offer you a good shot with the shotgun. So that's a good call. So
the yelp is kind of everything's cool, and the cut is?
A cut's just more of an excited sound. A lot of times if they're feeding, if they go, I hunt a lot of ranches, and the ranchers are feeding the hay out there, and a lot of times they'll fly down in the morning. If the rancher goes out there and rolls out a round bale, they'll be running over there, and you can see them when they get real content and they're eating. A lot of times they'll do the cut in that. So I've had it. If one's not calling in, I try everything. A purrs are very good. Just sometimes that'll get them in. The number one call to concentrate on is just a plain old yelp, because it works well. It works well. If you can call a hen in, if the tom's with a bunch of hens, if you can get the hen to come in, that works very well too. And the best way to do that is exactly duplicate what she's doing. If she is answering back to you,